Did you know that some creatures on Earth are actually immortal? One example is a type of tiny jellyfish. They're able to affect the development of their cells if they're sick or damaged or old. They basically shrink back into their polyp stage and respawn. Imagine if humans could learn how to regenerate our bodies to a younger age. Imagine respawning 1,000 years from now.
So this is one of our ambulances at Tomorrow Biostasis. Tomorrow Biostasis, one of my organizations, it's basically a cryopreservation company or organization for Europe. It works together with non-profit foundations in Switzerland. And the idea is that whenever one of our members dies, that then with one of those ambulances and the medical team inside of there and the equipment, we can cryopreserve them. This is fundamentally the idea of what we do. And we're an organization that covers all of Europe and then do the storage of the patients, the people who have died and want to be cryopreserved in Switzerland. So I'll show you how all of that works. This is our Berlin-based ambulance, of course. We have one in Amsterdam as well through a partner, and soon also one in Switzerland, in Zurich. So the whole procedure is practically done in here. So the logic basically works like that, right? Should someone's heart stop, at that point, the cellular degradation basically starts, right? On a cellular level, the cells start to practically self-recycle themselves. Now, what you want to do to stop that process is first you want to cool. And this is the first step that is being done in here. Then you give a range of medications to make sure that the brain and the rest of the body is protected against any type of degradation. We drive the body to Switzerland in that case, where then the cool down is done to around minus 196 degrees Celsius. And at that temperature, you can now keep the body, for decades or even hundreds of years without any further degradation, until such time in the future where this whole process can be reversed. This is the fundamental idea of what we do here. So in cryopreservation, the most important part, of course, that needs to be cryopreserved is the brain. And to do so, you need to perfuse, you need to bring a cryoprotective agent into the body. You can do it directly through the big vessels next to the heart, the aorta. So that would be here, the aortic arch, as you can see here. So you basically introduce this cryoprotective agent directly through the ascending aorta. And then due to that kind of central access to all the other arteries of the body, the cryoprotective agent can reach all the small vessels, all the larger vessels, and this is fundamentally what we do to make sure that the quality of a cryopreservation is as high as anyhow possible. It's very important to always state that currently we can cryopreserve people, but we cannot wake them up yet. We cannot bring them out of cryopreservation. Let's say 50 years ago, this idea was much, much closer to science fiction than it is to science, right? In the US, this topic has been around for much, much longer than it has in Europe, right? So almost around 50 years, this has been a topic in the US. And even a topic for longer than that, but organizations have been around for 50 years.
Welcome to Alcor's 50th anniversary conference. Very glad that you all came here. I was actually expecting maybe 50 or 80 people. We ended up with almost 200, which I think is probably a record for us. So don't let people get comfortable. When you talk to people and they say, oh yeah, it's fine, you know, life extension is going to come along and save me. Well, are you really sure about that? Maybe you should put on your seatbelt, get your emergency fund, get your cryonics arrangements in place, and then you can relax a little bit. There's still things you can do to improve your chances, but then you've got things in place, then you can start experimenting with this stuff. But for goodness sake, put plan A in place, and for many of us, plan A, of course, means plan alcohol. Thank you.
Welcome to the Alcor Life Extension Foundation here in Scottsdale, Arizona, in the United States. Alcor is almost 50 years in operation, the longest-lived cryonics organization. And what we do here is essentially give people another chance at life. So the idea of cryonics essentially is at the point of legal death, which is not the same as biological death, let's preserve the person, keep them from deteriorating as perfectly as possible, and then take them into the future, one day at a time, until we have more advanced technology that can fix their heart disease, their cancer, and the aging process itself, and allow them to continue on living again. This is Alcor's operating room, although before we get to that stage, I want to explain what we do here. We're going to remove as much blood and intracellular fluid as we can from the patient and replace it with a cryoprotectant solution. Now, cryoprotectant you can think of simply as a medical-grade antifreeze. But about half our members, myself included, have chosen just to preserve the brain. And you might think, well, why would you just preserve the brain? Don't you need a body? Well, you do, but you don't need it today, because my view is that by the time I need this, unless I get killed early on, my body's going to be in pretty bad shape in a few decades, so the whole thing's going to have to be regenerated anyway. The one thing you can't replace is up here. That's your brain. We may start over here, but then we're going to do a separation, a few vertebrae down. You want to get the top of the spinal cord in there. We're going to take the cephalon, which is what we call the brain plus the skull. We're going to put that upside down in the neuro ring here, secure it in this ring. And then instead of going in through the blood vessels in the heart, we're instead going to use the carotid blood vessels here. Otherwise, it's the same procedure. It's going to circulate through the system over here, again replacing the blood in the brain and the other fluids with our cryoprotectant solution. Here in Alcor's patient care bay, we have all 185 human patients and around 88 pets. Let's go take a look. Now, these vessels that you see are what contain our patients. These are called dewars, D-E-W-A-R. They're cryogenic dewars. These are very much like thermos flasks. If you've ever used a thermos flask to keep your coffee hot or a drink cold, you know how these work. They have a vacuum layer on the inside. So here I can put my hand on it. It's just kind of chilly metal. But inside it's extremely cold. It's minus 320 Fahrenheit or minus 196 degrees Celsius. So very, very cold. This is a model of contain 4 whole body patients. So there's 1 patient in each of these pods. That's just for mechanical protection. So if there's any reason why they get banged around, they're protected. And we use these hooks to, we have a winch in the roof there. We just lift it up and put them down in here. So they'll be with 3 other people. So we have 4 whole body patients. Plus we can get actually in the center column several neuro patients, or we may have pets up in the top column. So 4 whole body patients and 5 neuro patients. Or we can convert one of these containers to actually store 10 neuro patients by putting in shelves here. So you could potentially get 45 neuro patients in one of these. So this is what we've used for a long time. But now we have a new model, which is this one, the Super Dewar. So now we can get about 11 whole body patients inside the same floor space. So, it's between a half and a third of the cost for liquid nitrogen, for rental space, and so on. So that's really helped to keep down on long-term costs. Especially if you're a whole body member, quite a bit of the money that you pay for that, out of the $200,000 minimum, we put $115,000 aside for long-term storage. So after we've done all the procedures, all the transport, the protection, the surgery, after all that, we have more than half of the money left, put in a special protected trust fund that can't be used for any other purpose, and that maintains people in these for as long as it takes. And as you mentioned, the person we have the longest was cryopreserved in 1967, and we still have him. So we haven't lost a patient yet.
So I got this bag. Look at the amazing logo. I mean, how cool is that? I don't know what's in here. There's some goodies, I guess. I hope there's a little toy brain that I can put on my shelf. Let's see. My brain will be in one of these doers. My head will be on a rack inside one of these doers, so that's fun. This is like almost more fun than having a little toy brain.
I guess in that case, I'm reasonably confident that consciousness and identity would be preserved. Is it the brain, is it the biological organism that matters? Is it the memories that matter? Is it the personality that matters? I do think that once we actually find ourselves in the future, in this technological future, with all these options confronting us, upload or not, cryopreserve or upload, this kind of uploading or that kind of uploading, in line with all these technologies, the notion of death is just going to flip multiple ways.
So considering that the brain is a dynamical system, and then it's a gazillion attractors and moving parts. I never hear people talking about this, but when we're frozen, obviously we're frozen into a state. How confident are you that freezing a dynamical system will remember which way it was going?
Yeah, you might lose the structure. I think at the very least you would certainly lose like what you were thinking at that moment. It's hopeless to have the idea that it's actually going to get my current state of thought and experience. But I think you might raise this worry that somehow it's not just my current state of thought and experience. At all moments, for the last years, my brain is in a certain trajectory, and maybe that dynamic trajectory is part of what makes me me. What do you think? Will you be uploaded? Would you allow your brain neurons to be replaced by silicon chips which fire better and make you smarter?
No.
No, you want your original brain. Do you know the idea of like beaming up? So we'll destroy your body here, but we will create a new version of it, like back in Las Cruces, right? It's a bit like 3D printing. Have you come across this?
Yes.
You print, that's like you 3D print a copy of you.
Yeah, so they
on the other side.
can 3D print a copy of you back in Las Cruces, and it would save you the 5.5-hour trip of boredom. Would you do it? Even if you know that might not really be you, it'll just be a new you that thinks they're you.
Exactly. That's why I'm not doing it.
I don't know if I'd take the chance.
You're worried that you might die.
I don't
I've
want
always been
to
a skeptic of that.
I don't want to be reborn in the future and not be alive. It's just like some new version. Like there's still the exact same person. Like everything is the same, except it's not me actually doing things, seeing things. It's someone else, so I'm still dead.
Tell me when you're done, I'll turn on the lights. All right, anybody got more pictures? We ready? All right. The super doer, you see Ray in the back there, that's shaped differently than the others. And we have orders to, I think for one more super doer that's on order. It takes approximately 6 months to make one of these things. I know it's strange that Alcor is located in the desert, but they did that for several reasons. One, Arizona is very geologically stable. We don't get earthquakes. We also don't get hurricanes or tornadoes. And another reason is we have 7 liquid nitrogen manufacturers in the valley. Liquid nitrogen is actually a very cheap product. It's 19 cents a liter. It's a byproduct of another process. So that allows us to, that's the reason we have them submerged in liquid nitrogen, and that's kept them at the temperature.
We should get you signed up for Alcor because they're changing it to where it's age-based. So if you can lock in at a 9-year-old rate, I mean, it's a trade-off because you'll be paying, well, I'll be paying more years, but it'll be a cheaper rate. So, or at least we should get your dad to sign up.
It may be up to Mother Nature when we die. But since we are a sentient and self-aware part of nature, I see no reason not to take an active part in influencing that decision. A person can only do so much given their limited lifespan. Imagine living 80 or more youthful, vigorous years before the effects of age crept up on you so that your youthful years were drastically extended. Imagine being able to do the things that you never had time for and having another chance at the things you messed up the first couple times around. A longer lifespan would benefit society as a whole. We would be wiser as a species. I believe that on average, we grow wiser with age. When people live to a very ripe age, they have seen history repeat itself with the same results. They have had plenty of time to review their past and to gain a clearer understanding of what is really important in life. I wish I could zap forward in time and see what might become of us.
Alice! Here you go. Thanks. Sit over here. There you go. Oh, I'll bring you some milk. Mom and Dad really inspired me in the sense where I think that's kind of where a lot of my brain wiring comes from, as far as having an interest in math and science. And then when I graduated from Berkeley, Mom and Dad gave me an Apple IIci computer, and the only thing we could really do on the internet, because there was no World Wide Web yet, was go on news groups. But the only ones I was interested in, strangely, to my surprise, was anything to do with physics, not so much math, because I didn't understand math, but anything to do with technology, futurism, transhumanism, even cryonics, which is freezing humans. And at the time, it was like I had this grand epiphany, like all at once, and I thought, the reason we need to freeze ourselves is if we go into deep space and we need to get to the next star, we're gonna need to either have generations go by the time we get there or learn how to freeze humans. So I kind of tried to instill that same excitement of brain wiring into my daughter.
Species becomes fully self-aware to the point where they can ponder their self-awareness. When ours became fully focused, when that camera turned all the way around and pointed exactly back at ourselves, creating that locked-in feedback loop. We are at an awkward and unsettling stage in our history. We must take baby steps to fit in with nature as our ancient selves did. But now as mentally winged creatures, we do it with a sense of the bigger picture, a deep understanding of the natural world through chaos theory and technology that aligns. We are runners of machines.
The first question is, really, we think about cells having a natural lifespan. You know, they call it the Hayflick limit. And this is because telomeres, which are the caps of these chromosomes, get shorter and shorter and shorter and leave the DNA vulnerable. And what you discovered was that this is a reversible process. Now, what's really interesting is you're not talking about living forever. You're really talking about reaching an old age that is a healthy old age, free from the diseases of old age as late as you possibly can.
So I'm Linda Partridge, and we're in the Max Planck Institute for Biology of Aging in Cologne. And we are interested in interventions, particularly nutrition, food, but also the molecular systems in the body that sense food and the way that they affect the aging process and aging-related diseases. We also do experimental work, and we're in one of the experimental laboratories at the moment, with flies, fruit flies, Drosophila, and with mice. From the evolutionary point of view, aging is really weird because as an organism or a person ages, they become more likely to die. So individually, aging is an unconditionally bad thing. Yet if you look out in nature, you've got things that can live 200 years, a bowhead whale, or 40 years, a bat, and other things that live only a day. This is a trait that's out there in nature and it evolves. But it's an individual disadvantage, so how can that happen? There's of course a lot of speculation around aging. People are of course interested in trying to stay healthy as they age, and even in some cases of trying to avoid death altogether. So I think ideas that we're going to be able to cryopreserve people or download their software and recreate them in the future, I mean, these are great things for science fiction at the moment, but it is fiction. I think we're not seeing in the results of the experimental research at the moment much sign that that's going to happen in the foreseeable future. There's been some really interesting recent research in the United States, which I think shows great promise for being translatable to humans. So the initial experiments were slightly Frankenstein. What the experimenters did was to take mice, and mice are usually from inbred strains, so you can actually conjoin their blood supplies, join them together without there being any problem with the reaction against the other mouse's blood, because they're all genetically identical to each other. And so the experimenters wanted to ask the question, if they give an old mouse young blood, can this improve its health during aging? So they did the obvious control experiments. They hitched up an old mouse to an old mouse, a young mouse to a young mouse, but then they did the opposite, old to young. Showed an improvement in the health of the stem cells. So what that's telling us is that either bad things accumulate in blood during aging, so that the old circulation contains damaging molecules or other factors, or there are particularly beneficial things in young blood. But either way round, if they can be identified, because blood is such an accessible thing, it should be possible to remove damaging factors from old people or add rejuvenating young factors. So there's a lot of interest, of course, now in identifying the molecules and understanding how they're acting on different kinds of stem cells to improve their performance during aging. There's a lot of wall building goes on in science. Sometimes there's a big leap and a new discovery, but often it's filling in the blanks in a very large wall of discovery.
I know you've heard a number of prominent voices on certain media outlets that have mocked the connection that experts such as yourself have made between these extreme weather events and climate change. So for those that are still skeptical about the effects of climate change,
does your pumpkin have a name?
Jessica.
Oh. Jessica. Oh, she was a girl. Good. Okay.
How's your pumpkin coming, honey?
Good.
Ooh, spooky.
Yeah.
I'm so excited that I found this alien spaceship pumpkin.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure people breed these to look like this.
To look like alien spaceships.
I just need to put lights going around it. I don't know if blue looks right, but we'll see. So I feel like in the future we're gonna think more like the type of aliens that are on task doing things. We're gonna look like them because if we're in zero gravity, we'll have less bone density.
We would probably look like a completely different species.
Because there's less gravity. So they might be taller and skinnier. They won't need strong bones. But then when they get here, they'll be in a wheelchair.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's like a different kind of evolution where it just happens all of a sudden. You go to Mars, the very next generation, the kids are like super tall, like string beans.
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't want to be that tall, to be honest. It's kind of like, first of all, to build a house, this house already has a lot of bricks. We would need like twice as many if we were that tall. Yeah. I mean, technically, to other aliens, we kind of are aliens.
Well, that's true.
Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, cheese. Macaroni. I mean, if we're saying cheese, why not just say macaroni and cheese? Macaroni and cheese.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank you. Cool doggy.
What does he think he owns?
I know the time went.
I just don't like the idea of dying. It's not that I'm afraid of dying. I mean, maybe I would. I don't know. I don't think of it as that, as afraid. I think of it as I just don't like the idea that things are going to end. It's not that, I mean, I am motivated partly because I know that I'm going to at least, most likely perish at some point. But in my mind, of course, I'm thinking of it as I'm being paused. As Max Moore puts it, I will be in need of help and I want to be preserved. So I go through life with that mindset. So let me try to think, what would it be like if I still truly thought death was it and there was nothing else, no possibility? Yeah, that's depressing. I just find it depressing. And I feel like even if it's impossible somehow to be immortal, and first of all, immortal doesn't mean indestructible. Even jellyfish would get squished. They're not immortal anymore. So that just means that they won't die of aging. I feel like even if it's impossible to ever make people immortal, that why not strive for that and strive for longer lifespans? And of course, there's this kind of mentality where if you can live as long as possible, then hopefully at some point before you perish, someone will find out some better way of living even longer. And so then Alcor becomes plan B. But I guess to me, I would just turn the question back around and say, why would someone be happier with the thought of dying than the thought of not dying? And I personally can't understand that. I can't imagine being just comfortable with the thought of dying and that's it. Can't imagine.
I'm Judith Campisi, and I'm here at the Buck Institute in Northern California. And this institute the whole institute works on aging. We work on diseases of aging, but also basic processes that seem to be important for aging. So there are lots of claims, usually by companies, that claim if you do this or you do that, you're going to live for a long time. And long is something that can be 500 years or thousands of years. I mean, some of the claims are just outrageous. Absolutely zero evidence. We can't even get a mouse to live 5 years instead of 3 years, much less a human to live hundreds of years. No one has come across any way to take a complex species like a mouse or a human and make it really live substantially longer. It can be done with simple organisms like the little worms, C. elegans, but it really cannot be done in complicated organisms like mice or people. So Hayflick was the first to describe this process called cellular senescence. And he established that normal human cells do not divide indefinitely, and when they stop, they basically are irreversibly arrested from ever proliferating again. So he thought this might have something to do with aging. You know, if you cut yourself, you don't heal as fast. It's because the cells don't divide as quickly. When we make a mouse where we can get rid of these cells, and that mouse then has an average lifespan that is substantially longer, but still the maximum lifespan of that mouse is the same. The mouse still dies, and it dies pretty much on schedule. So what does it die of? It turns out it dies of the many, many things that mice die of normally, but it's all compressed so that they don't spend the last 6 months of their lives being ill, but just a few weeks, and then they die. And I think that's maybe one of the realistic goals of modern aging research, is to improve health to the point where you will die, for sure, but you die, as I said, on this tennis court, and you're winning, and then boom, 110 years old and you're dead.
I'm 86, so it opens the question of, do I want to live? I probably don't want another 100 years of being as helpless as I am. If I were to join the cryonic crowd in my current condition, I would not be happy because my brain doesn't work so well. I'm not the same person I used to be. I would like to see the future. But what did you have to give up for that? But curiosity would be the driver that would make me want to stay around forever. Here comes the future. Come in.
Hey, Grandma.
Hello. I love you.
Love you.
Nous sommes ici en institut de recherche en biologie, en sciences de la vie, et notamment la recherche du vieillissement, des causes du vieillissement, de la chimie du vieillissement et des conséquences du vieillissement qui impliquent les maladies et finalement la mort. Où on en est après une dizaine d'années de la recherche assez intensive. On est toujours dans cette manque de la connaissance sur la racine de la cause du vieillissement, par laquelle on peut comprendre toutes les nombreuses manifestations du vieillissement. Toutes ces maladies incurables qui nous tuent, il y a des centaines, environ 200, qui dépendent tous d'une horloge biologique, horloge du cancer et horloge de la longévité est en directe relation. Et l'hypothèse la plus simple, c'est qu'il y a une cause commune. Mon approche est, allons chercher la cause commune. Si on la trouve, ce serait extrêmement important, car s'il y en a une, et commune à toutes les maladies malignes, dégénératives, etc., ben, il suffit de considérer cette cause comme un biomarqueur, de le supprimer, au moins la première conséquence de la supprimer, et à ce moment-là, il serait plus simple de prévenir toutes les maladies d'un coup qu'une seule isolée. Et on a déjà parlé, l'exemple dans la population humaine, ça sont les centenaires qui typiquement ne souffrent d'aucune de ces centaines de maladies. Et donc, les centenaires, c'est la source de mon optimisme qu'on pourra vivre jusqu'à 120 ans, presque tout le monde, mais ça ne veut pas dire que cette limite est immuable. Mais il faut modifier génétiquement l'homme pour qu'il vive au-delà de 120 ans. Alors, on cherche pour les humains, parce que ce n'est pas évident de modifier génétiquement la lignée germinale humaine, c'est même interdit. Pour le moment, il faut changer le potentiel de vie, probablement le métabolisme. Et ça, je n'anticipe pas, certainement, je ne vivrai pas le temps de voir ces recherches sur la modification génétique humaine. Donc, nous soyons modestes et voir comment réduire au maximum, mieux éliminer les sources principales de la souffrance humaine. La majorité des gens n'ont pas tellement le problème avec le fait qu'ils ne seront pas éternels, qu'ils vont mourir. Ils savent qu'ils vont mourir. Et ils ont peur de la façon comment ils vont mourir. Est-ce que ça sera à cause de cancer ou Alzheimer, démence, etc. Ils ont peur de ça. Il y a 4 personnes sur 10 000 qui n'ont pas ce problème, ce sont les centenaires. Et voilà, notre projet, entre guillemets modeste, c'est d'éliminer la source de souffrance à cause des maladies et que les gens vivent jusqu'au bout sans avoir peur de la souffrance liée à la cause de la mort.
How do you know you're not in the Matrix? You're not living in this giant computer simulation. How do you know about the external world? Then, of course, the question arises, how do we know we're not in one of those? I take seriously the possibility that the world we live in is, in fact, a simulation. Simulation technology is getting better all the time.
Well, actually, there are two different kinds of simulation technology.
Wouldn't that be weird if you also do that? Which I hope you do. But I'll let you wait till you're 18 and you figure it out. Then, what if they revived all of us at the same time? Would that be cool or would that be super cringy?
I don't know.
Okay, so here's the thing. Plants on Earth survive because they're used to 24-hour day-night cycle. Mars is the same as Earth. It's just plus an extra 40 minutes.
Oh yeah, people should notice that.
Not mainly because we would get extra time to laze around in the morning, but mainly because the plants would grow.
And because we'd be more used to it, you know.
Yeah, we'd be more used to it.
Because I'm pretty sure from how we've kind of descended, I'm pretty sure our brains are automatically kind of like know like how long to sleep. Not exactly, but like kind of when. And an estimate, like not estimate, but like kind of around, you know, it kind of knows.
Let's go to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Well, it looks pretty.
It does.
Finally, the moon came up. Finally! Ooh, we can howl at the moon.
Ooh. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Well, hon, I think it's time to get some sleep for school. Last week of school.
My name is Leonard Hayflick. I'm professor of anatomy at the University of California in San Francisco. It is a lovely day here in a redwood forest in Northern California. This is a forest of second growth redwood trees. The belief that they are many centuries or millennia old is actually a myth. If you argue that the trees have been standing in the same spot for that many years, that is correct. But the oldest living cells in a redwood tree or bristlecone pine, which is just as old or even older, the living cells are no more than 30 years of age. They are found in the root hairs or in the needles, so that the age of these old trees is the age of dead tissue. It is illogical to argue that the trees are the oldest living things if the living part of the tree is, as has been determined actually, to be no older than about 33 to 35 years. As we have misconceptions about the age of redwood trees, we also have misconceptions about the biology of ourselves in respect to aging. The misconception is the failure to distinguish between the aging process, which is a destructive process or a process where function is lost, as opposed to longevity determination, which is a process that keeps you alive. For example, you can keep yourself living longer if you pay attention to the common sense rules that we all know about in respect to exercise, to maintaining your health, to a proper diet. All of these mechanisms, these means of survival, have as their end result increasing your longevity. Underlying that system or phenomenon is the phenomenon of aging, which is a process that has its origins in molecules or atoms even. And that process is governed not by biological laws, but by laws of physics. And the physical law that is applicable is the second law of thermodynamics. That is that energy tends to dissipate or spread out from a source. And the source of energy in biological molecules are, for the most part, the chemical bonds that hold these complex molecules together. Those bonds weaken over time, and the molecule becomes dysfunctional, so that the aging process then begins. The major concern that many people in this field have is the failure to distinguish between those two processes, and also the belief that they can overcome a physical law by learning how to eliminate the aging process. That cannot be done. It is a law of physics that is just that, a law. I don't know whether you're interested in funny stories, but if you are, I'll tell you one. That has to do with the way in which one can distinguish between presenile dementia and senile dementia. Presenile dementia is when a gentleman leaves the lavatory and forgets to zip himself up. Senile dementia is when the gentleman enters the lavatory and forgets to zip his zipper down. Not funny. There's another one. There are 3 early signs of aging in humans. The first sign is the loss of short-term memory. And I don't remember the other 2.